a fascinating character, Fenrir. He becomes, by the end of the story, an absolutely terrifying presence, and remains an absolutely terrifying presence, in that there are myths, stories of him being, starts off as a normal-sized dwarf, and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, until he becomes this colossal, vast entity. And obviously, the bigger he gets, the more he eats, naturally enough.
I'm the same.
And there are real concerns that one day he will consume everything inside. Just eat the gods and eat anything that can run away fast enough. So the gods decide he will have to be bound for the good of all life. And they try and chain him up with the massive great iron chains and all the, but by relatively straightforward means. And of course he's so big and massive and powerful that he just breaks every chain. They get through all of the normal materials that you can make a chain out of, and none of that works. And then they decide to use mithril, the sort of magical metal produced by the dwarves. And they go to the dwarves and they create, after a bit of negotiation, they create this chain which is like a thread, a bit of cotton. It's ridiculously slim but infinitely strong. And there they go up to the wolf and say, "Oh, yeah, we've done all these fun games of tying you up with copper chains and iron chains and bronze chains, and you broke them all. Can we tie you up with this one?" And the wolf looks at it and thinks, "Well, that's so damn thin. There's a trick here." I'm not longing for now. And so after a bit more parley, the wolf eventually agrees, but Fenrir says, "I'll only do it if someone is willing to put their hand in my mouth whilst I'm back." And everyone suddenly remembers they've got a dental appointment or they've got to get their hair done. I've left the gas on, sorry. Except Chew, whose name is sometimes pronounced Tyr or Chew, I don't know, who is the only god willing to take her. And this god has a special relationship with Fenrir, in that he's been his, well, not owner, but he's been the one to feed him and look after him, take him for walkies and whatever else, for his life so far. And so Fenrir agrees that his best friend amongst the gods can be the one to stick his hand in the wolf's mouth. The chains are wrapped, and needless to say, they're unbreakable. Of course, that's the whole trick of the thing. And Fenrir struggles and struggles and struggles, and when he realizes he's been had, he bites Chew's hand off. And it is the price of human stability. Well, not just human, the whole world, every species in the world. The price of everything's stability is that Chew loses his hand, and so he becomes the one-handed god, and there's a whole thing about that. How we understand, I say we, I'm not a practicing heathen, although I'm quite open to the existence of all of the heathen gods, but I don't directly engage. So how an active heathen would understand this is maybe not quite the same as how I tend to think of the situation. Do we believe today, and thousands of years ago, did people believe that there was a wolf the size of Mount Everest somewhere in the world? Possibly some people may have taken it in a very literal fashion. Others, I suspect, would have seen it as more metaphorical, that there was a presence in the world of gargantuan power, which felt wolf-like, but wasn't necessarily an actual 1,000-foot tall wolf somewhere in the world. And this colossal presence was bound. But part of the story is that one day, of course, Ragnarök will happen, and the wolf's chains will break. So nothing stays bound forever. At some point, this colossal power will, boom, go off. And you can take it in a very boom sense. Is this a metaphor for the atomic bomb? Is this a prediction of one day there will be a weapon so big it will ruin everything and kill 100,000 million people? Which will end the period of history when this is happening, and it's feasible that we won't learn the lessons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We'll end up building bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger bombs, and one day there will be something so colossal it will devastate an entire country in 30 seconds. Is this a metaphor for human destructiveness rather than wolf destructiveness? Is it a metaphor for the tectonic hands of the earth? You can be doing quite nicely and suddenly there's an earthquake and 50,000 people are dead in a matter of minutes. Is what Fenrir is, that huge power in the earth. It could be understood in a variety of different contexts.
Yeah.
As to the capacity of destructiveness. And
None
why.
of them have a happy ending, though.
Fenrir doesn't survive Ragnarok. And after Ragnarok, hardly anyone survives Ragnarok. Handful of people survive Ragnarok, and they start again. And there is a debate amongst historians as well as amongst heathens as to whether Ragnarok is a genuinely pagan story, or whether this was an attempt to look at Christian stories of Armageddon and think, should we have something a bit like that? And then kind of generate a story. And certainly a lot of Christians back at the previous periods of history took the idea of the death of the gods and a new dawn of peace afterwards, not as a prophecy of the distant future, but as something that had happened. The old gods were dead. Here's Christ. It's all smashing and lovely. Hasn't quite worked like that in practice. So is Ragnarok, has it happened? Is it going to happen? Is it just something that was made up in response to Christianity? It's just a story with no prophetic capacity whatsoever. Depends on the individual you talk to as to how we understand quite what Ragnarok is. But a fair number of cultures around the world have got some kind of end of the world scenario, body of myths, where at some point everything goes tits up and usually starts again, because most modern traditions lend themselves to a bit like Hinduism or Jainism. They have this notion of cyclic rather than straight line time. Nothing ever is really over. It just falls apart and starts again in a different format.
It's because wherever humans are involved, it all goes belly up at some point.
True. Even the best laid plans don't stay best forever.